There is a question so fundamental that most people never think to ask it, and the ones who do usually stop at the first answer they receive, because the first answer sounds complete. It sounds like a destination. It sounds like the kind of answer that closes a door rather than opens one. The question is this: where is the universe? Not what is in it, not how big it is, not how old it is. Where is it? Where does it actually exist? What is it located inside of, or on, or within? And if the answer is nothing, if the answer is that it exists in no container and no surrounding medium, then what does that tell you about the nature of existence itself? You probably have an answer already. The universe is everything. It is all of space and time and matter and energy. It contains everything that exists, which means it cannot itself be located inside anything, because there is no outside. There is no edge you could reach and then ask what is on the other side. The universe is the totality. The question of where it is located is therefore meaningless, because location requires a containing space, and the universe is all the space there is. That answer is the surface. It is taught in classrooms and repeated in documentaries, and it sounds like the final word on the matter. It sounds like the kind of statement that ends inquiry rather than beginning it. But here is what is hiding directly beneath it. That answer assumes that space is the container of existence. It assumes that what is real is what occupies spatial coordinates. It assumes that to be located means to have a position within a geometric framework. And when you examine those assumptions, when you actually look at what physics and cosmology have discovered beneath them, the picture that emerges is so fundamentally different from the surface version that it does not just change the answer to the question, it changes what the question means. The universe may not be located in space at all. Space may be located in the universe. And if that inversion is correct, and the evidence for it is more substantial than most people have ever been shown, then the question of where the universe is located opens into something that physicists have been quietly grappling with for decades, something that ancient wisdom traditions described in their own language long before the mathematics existed to formalize it, and something that has direct implications for what you are, what consciousness is, and what the phrase divine intervention actually means at the level of physical reality. We are going to go through every layer of this today. We are going to start with what you know and peel it back, not once but several times, because each layer reveals a new surface beneath it, and each new surface, when you look closely, contains another veil. Let us begin at the beginning, not the beginning of the universe, the beginning of the question. When you look up at the night sky and see stars, what you are seeing is light that has traveled through space to reach your eyes. The space between you and those stars feels like emptiness, like a neutral container that the stars happen to occupy. This is the intuitive picture, and it is also the Newtonian picture. Space, in Newton's framework, was absolute. It was a fixed, infinite three-dimensional grid that existed independently of anything in it. Objects moved through space the way fish move through water, and space itself was unaffected by the motion of objects. It was the stage, and matter was the performance. This picture was so intuitive, so aligned with direct experience, that it dominated scientific thinking for 2 centuries. It felt self-evidently correct. Of course, space is the container. Of course, location means position within this container. The question of where the universe is located is therefore incoherent, because the universe is identical to the container itself. Then Einstein dismantled it. If this inversion is landing for you, that space is not the container but the contained. There is something I want to offer you before we go deeper. Have you spent years trying every surface fix, therapy, mindset work, manifestation, habit redesign, and the same patterns keep coming back in different clothes? Every one of those tools is working on belief and behavior. The actual pattern was installed deeper than any of them can reach. Beneath the veil, a quantum map of reality's hidden layers walks through the full 5-layer descent. The surface reality you were handed, the layer where the pattern was actually installed, the physics underneath that, the ancient traditions that mapped the same thing thousands of years ago, and what you actually are at the bottom of all of it. This is the layer that therapy, mindset work, and manifestation could never reach. The longer you keep working the surface, the longer that deeper layer keeps generating the same life. So do this one tonight. It's waiting in the pinned comment below. Now let us return to the dismantling, because what Einstein replaced that Newtonian picture with changes everything that follows. Not gradually, not with minor adjustments. He dismantled it at the foundation and replaced it with something that should have permanently altered the way humanity understands what space actually is. What he showed, through the mathematics of general relativity and the experimental confirmations that followed, is that space is not a fixed, neutral container. Space is a dynamic field. It has geometry, it curves, it bends in the presence of mass and energy, it can stretch and compress, it can carry waves, it can expand. Space-time, the unified fabric of space and time that Einstein described, is not the passive background of physical events. It is an active participant in them. This means that space is not the container of existence. Space is a physical thing, a structure, a medium with properties that can be measured and that respond to what is in them. The stars do not sit inside space the way marbles sit inside a box. The stars and the space around them are mutually constitutive. The mass of a star curves the space around it, and that curved space determines how other objects move, which changes the distribution of mass, which changes the curvature of space. It is a continuous dynamic relationship, not a fixed container holding passive contents. Now, if space is a physical structure with properties, if it is a thing rather than a neutral void, then space itself requires an explanation. Where does space come from? What is it made of? What is it a property of? And what, if anything, is it located within? These are not philosophical games. These are questions that working cosmologists and theoretical physicists take seriously. And the answers they have reached, the real answers beneath the textbook summaries, are extraordinary. Let us go to the layer directly beneath the Einsteinian picture, one of the most striking discoveries of the 20th century, one that is routinely taught in physics courses but rarely examined for its deepest implications, is that the universe appears to have had a beginning. The cosmic microwave background radiation, the faint thermal signature that permeates all of space at a temperature of approximately 2.7 degrees Kelvin, is the afterglow of an early hot dense state. The expansion of the universe, confirmed by the redshift of distant galaxies, is consistent with everything we observe having originated from an initial singularity approximately 13.8 billion years ago. This is called the Big Bang, and the name is somewhat misleading because it implies an explosion occurring in a pre-existing space. The more accurate picture, the one that general relativity actually describes, is that space itself began at that moment. Time itself began. There was no before. There was no surrounding void into which the universe expanded, because the void, the space, the geometry were all part of what began. The universe did not expand into anything. The expansion is the universe. Space is not getting bigger inside a larger container. The distances between objects are increasing because the fabric of space-time is stretching, and there is nothing outside that fabric for it to stretch into. This is where the surface version of the answer sounds definitive again. The universe is not inside anything. It began with space and time. There is no outside. The question is closed. But there is a layer beneath that. The Big Bang singularity, the point at which general relativity breaks down, and the density of matter and energy becomes infinite in the equations, is not a satisfying explanation. It is a placeholder. It is the point at which our current physics reaches its limit and says, we cannot see further. The singularity is not a thing that was there and then expanded. It is a mathematical artifact of pushing equations beyond their domain of validity. Something was happening at the origin of the universe, and we do not have a complete description of what it was. This is where quantum cosmology enters, and this is where the question of where the universe is located begins to transform into something genuinely strange. In the 1980s, physicists Stephen Hawking and James Hartle proposed what is now called the no-boundary proposal. Their idea, developed using the mathematics of quantum mechanics applied to the entire universe, was that the universe has no initial boundary in time. Instead of a sharp beginning, a singularity where time starts and before which there is nothing, Hartle and Hawking proposed that time itself becomes a spatial dimension near the origin. The distinction between space and time smooths out. There is no edge, no moment of creation, no singularity. The universe is, in their framework, self-contained in a very precise mathematical sense. It has no boundary, and therefore no requirement for an external cause or an external container. This is a remarkable proposal, and it is mathematically sophisticated, but let us be clear about what it does and does not say. It does not say that the universe arose from nothing in the colloquial sense. It says that the question of what came before the universe is malformed, because the concept of before requires time, and time is part of what the universe is. It is similar to asking what is south of the South Pole. The question contains an assumption that there is a direction called south that extends beyond the pole, which the geometry of the sphere does not support. The no-boundary proposal says that asking what is outside the universe contains a similar category error. But here is what is hiding beneath that answer, and this is the layer most people never reach. The no-boundary proposal and the standard Big Bang cosmology both describe the universe from within the framework of physics, using the mathematics of space-time and quantum fields. But both frameworks share a hidden assumption, one so deep that it rarely gets examined. The assumption is that the universe is fundamentally mathematical, that its deepest description is a set of equations, that what is ultimately real is the structure that the equations describe. Where does that structure exist? This is not a question about physical location. It is a question about the ontological status of mathematical structure, and it is here, at this layer, that the question of where the universe is located becomes genuinely radical. The physicist Max Tegmark has proposed what he calls the mathematical universe hypothesis, the idea that the universe is not merely described by mathematics, but that it is a mathematical structure. In this view, all mathematical structures exist with equal ontological status, and our universe is one of them. The universe is not located in space, because space is part of the mathematical structure. The universe is not located in time, because time is part of the mathematical structure. The universe is located, if that word can be used at all, in the space of all possible mathematical structures. It exists because it is a consistent formal system, and all consistent formal systems, in Tegmark's framework, have the same kind of existence. This is a philosophically controversial proposal, but it points at something real. When physicists write down the equations that describe the universe, where do those equations exist? They exist in the minds of the physicists who write them, yes. But the relationships they describe, the mathematical truths they express, do not depend on any particular mind. The Pythagorean theorem was true before Pythagoras. The structure of prime numbers does not depend on whether anyone has discovered it. Mathematical truths appear to be, in some sense, discovered rather than invented. They are there to be found, not created. If the universe is, at its deepest level, a mathematical structure, then it exists in the same way that mathematical truths exist, which is to say, not in space, not in time, but in whatever mode of existence abstract structures inhabit. And that mode of existence is not well understood. It is one of the deepest unsolved problems in the philosophy of mathematics and the philosophy of physics simultaneously. If this transmission is reaching a layer you have not been shown before, take a moment to like the video and subscribe so these explorations continue to find you. Now let us go to the quantum layer, because this is where the question of location becomes even stranger. Quantum mechanics, the most precisely tested theory in the history of science, describes the behavior of matter and energy at the smallest scales, and what it describes, when you look at it without flinching, is a picture of reality that is almost incompatible with the intuitive notion of things being located anywhere. Consider the wave function. In quantum mechanics, the complete description of a particle's state is given by a wave function, a mathematical object that encodes the probability of finding the particle at any given location, with any given momentum, with any given spin orientation, if you were to measure it. Before measurement, the particle does not have a definite location. It is not that we do not know where it is. It is that the question of where it is does not have a definite answer. The particle exists in a superposition of all possible locations, weighted by the probabilities encoded in the wave function. This is the measurement problem, and it is not a solved problem. When you measure the particle, you find it somewhere specific. The wave function, which was spread over many possible locations, appears to collapse to a single definite outcome. But the equations of quantum mechanics do not describe this collapse. They describe the smooth, continuous, deterministic evolution of the wave function according to the Schrödinger equation. The collapse, the moment when the quantum fuzziness resolves into a definite classical outcome, is not in the equations. It is imposed by hand as an additional postulate, and no one fully agrees on why it happens or what it means. Different interpretations of quantum mechanics give radically different answers to this question, and each interpretation has a different implication for where things are located. In the Copenhagen interpretation, the dominant view for most of the 20th century, the wave function is not a description of physical reality. It is a tool for calculating probabilities of measurement outcomes. Reality, in this view, is what you measure. Before measurement, it is not meaningful to ask where the particle is, because location is a property that only comes into existence when a measurement is made. The particle does not have a location until it is observed. This is already strange enough. But let us go to the interpretation that takes the wave function most seriously as a description of reality. In the Everett interpretation, sometimes called the many worlds interpretation, the wave function never collapses. It evolves continuously and deterministically according to the Schrödinger equation, always. When a measurement is made, the universe does not collapse to one outcome. It branches. Every possible outcome of the measurement occurs in different branches of the universal wave function. You, the observer, become entangled with the measuring device, which becomes entangled with the particle, and the entire system evolves into a superposition of states in which every possible outcome has occurred, each in its own branch. In this picture, the universe is not located in space. Space is one of the structures that exists within the universal wave function. The wave function itself, the complete description of all branches of reality, is an object in a mathematical space called Hilbert space, which has an astronomically large number of dimensions, far more than the 3 spatial dimensions and 1 temporal dimension we experience. Our experienced reality, the 3-dimensional world you are moving through right now, is a particular branch of the universal wave function, a particular slice through this vast mathematical object. And that mathematical object is not located anywhere in the physical sense. It is the structure from which physical location, among other things, emerges. Now let us stay at the quantum level for a moment longer, because there is something here that most people stop before reaching, and it is the piece that connects the physics to the ancient maps in a way that is not metaphorical but structural. Quantum field theory, the framework that unifies quantum mechanics with special relativity, describes the universe not as a collection of particles, but as a collection of fields. A quantum field is a mathematical object that assigns a quantum state to every point in space-time. Particles, in this framework, are not fundamental objects. They are excitations of fields, local disturbances in the underlying field that have quantized energy. The electron is not a tiny ball. It is a ripple in the electron field that permeates all of space-time. The photon is not a particle of light. It is a quantized excitation of the electromagnetic field. This means that the fundamental stuff of the universe is not matter. It is not particles. It is fields. And these fields are not located in space the way objects are located in space. The fields are coextensive with space-time itself. They are everywhere, simultaneously, at every point. The electron field is not somewhere, it is everywhere. It is a property of space-time itself, not an object within space-time. And here is the layer beneath that. These quantum fields, even in their lowest energy state, even in what physicists call the vacuum, are not empty. They are seething with activity. The quantum vacuum is not nothing. It is a state of minimum energy in which quantum fluctuations are constantly occurring, virtual particles appearing and annihilating, fields oscillating at every frequency. The Casimir effect, the measurable attractive force between two uncharged metal plates placed very close together in a vacuum, is a direct experimental confirmation of vacuum energy. The plates alter the spectrum of vacuum fluctuations between them, creating a pressure difference that pushes them together. The vacuum is not empty, it is full. It is the ground state of all the quantum fields, and it is vibrating. The total energy of the quantum vacuum, if you try to calculate it using quantum field theory, comes out infinite. This is one of the most embarrassing unsolved problems in theoretical physics. The cosmological constant problem. The observed energy density of empty space, inferred from the accelerating expansion of the universe, is approximately 10 to the power of 120 times smaller than the naive quantum field theory prediction. This is the largest discrepancy between a theoretical prediction and an experimental observation in the history of science. Something is cancelling almost all of the vacuum energy, and we do not know what. But the fact that remains, beneath the embarrassment of the discrepancy, is that the vacuum has energy. Empty space is not empty. The ground state of the universe is a field of quantum activity, and this field, this seething quantum vacuum that underlies all of space-time, is the closest thing physics has to a description of what the universe is located within. Not a container, not a surrounding void, a substrate, a ground, a plenum from which all structure, all matter, all energy, all space, all time emerges as organized excitation. This is where we lift a veil and find something ancient waiting on the other side. The concept of a primordial plenum, a fullness that underlies and precedes all apparent form, appears in the cosmological frameworks of traditions separated by thousands of years and thousands of miles. And the specific way they describe it is not vaguely similar to the quantum vacuum. In several cases, it is structurally isomorphic in ways that deserve careful attention. Let us start with the Vedantic tradition of ancient India, because it offers the most mathematically precise analog to what quantum field theory describes. In the Upanishads, the philosophical texts that form the foundation of Vedantic thought, the ultimate ground of reality is called Brahman. Brahman is not a god in the anthropomorphic sense. It is not a being that exists somewhere. It is existence itself, the ground of all being, the substrate from which all apparent reality emerges. The Sanskrit term used to describe Brahman is Sat Chit Ananda, typically translated as being, consciousness, bliss, but the philosophical content is more precise than the translation suggests. Sat means pure existence, not the existence of any particular thing, but the bare fact of existence itself. Chit means pure awareness or consciousness, not the consciousness of any particular subject, but the bare fact of awareness itself. Ananda means the intrinsic fullness or completeness of this ground, its non-deficiency, its plenum nature. Brahman, in the Advaita Vedanta school developed by the philosopher Adi Shankaracharya in the 8th century, is not located in the universe. The universe is located in Brahman, or more precisely, the universe is a modification of Brahman, the way a wave is a modification of the ocean. The wave is not a separate object that exists inside the ocean. The wave is the ocean in a particular form. The ocean does not lose anything when it becomes a wave, and the wave does not exist independently of the ocean. The relationship between the universe and Brahman in this framework is precisely this. The universe is Brahman in a particular form. The substrate is not something other than the universe. It is what the universe is made of, at the deepest layer. Now here is where the structural parallel to quantum field theory becomes precise rather than merely suggestive. In quantum field theory, particles are excitations of fields. The fields are the fundamental reality. Particles are what the fields look like when they are locally organized in a particular way. In Vedantic cosmology, objects and events in the universe are modifications of Brahman. Brahman is the fundamental reality. The universe is what Brahman looks like when it takes on apparent form through the principle of Maya, which is not illusion in the sense of unreality, but the creative power of Brahman to appear as multiplicity while remaining fundamentally unified. The parallel is not superficial. In both frameworks, what appears to be a collection of separate objects is actually a single underlying field or substrate in different states of excitation or modification. In both frameworks, the apparent multiplicity of things is not fundamental. It is a feature of a particular level of description, not the deepest level. In both frameworks, the question of where the universe is located cannot be answered by pointing to a container, because the universe and its ground are not two separate things in a container relationship. They are one thing in a modification relationship. What layer of reality have you recently seen through? If there has been a moment when a truth that was hidden in plain sight suddenly became visible to you, something you always sensed beneath the surface, but could not articulate until it arrived, drop it in the comments. What was the illusion, and what was underneath it? But let us go to a different tradition, because the Vedantic parallel is well known enough that it risks becoming a familiar surface. There is a less commonly cited tradition that makes a more specific claim, one that connects directly to the question of divine intervention in a way that the physics makes newly comprehensible. In the Kabbalistic tradition of Jewish mysticism, the cosmological framework is built around the concept of Ein Sof, which means without end or the infinite. Ein Sof is the name for the divine ground of reality, not God as a personal being, but God as the absolute ground of existence, the infinite that cannot be bounded or described by any attribute, because every attribute would be a limitation, and Ein Sof is by definition unlimited. The Kabbalistic cosmology describes creation not as something that happened in space and time, but as a process called tzimtzum, a Hebrew word meaning contraction or withdrawal. The idea, developed by the 16th century Kabbalist Isaac Luria in Safed in northern Israel, is that before creation, Ein Sof was everywhere. There was no space, no void, no place for anything other than the infinite to exist. Creation required not an expansion, but a contraction. Ein Sof withdrew into itself, creating a vacated space, a shalal, within which the finite universe could exist. Into this vacated space, a ray of divine light entered, and from this ray, all the structures of creation were formed. Now let us be precise about the structural content of this idea, because it is extraordinary when placed alongside modern cosmology. The Lurianic tzimtzum describes creation as the emergence of a bounded space within an infinite ground. The finite universe does not expand into a pre-existing void. The void is created by the withdrawal of the infinite, making room for the finite. The universe is not located in space that existed before it. The space is part of what came into being. And the infinite ground from which the universe emerged did not disappear when the universe appeared. It is still there, surrounding and underlying the finite creation, the vacated space existing within Ein Sof, the way a whole exists within a solid material. This is structurally parallel to the cosmological picture in which the universe is a self-contained structure that did not expand into a pre-existing space, but in which the quantum vacuum, the underlying field plenum, persists as the ground of all physical structure. The universe is not located in nothing, it is located within, or perhaps more precisely, as a bounded region of an infinite substrate that does not itself have location in the ordinary sense. And now we arrive at the phrase in the title that most people will have been waiting for. Divine intervention. What does it mean, and what does the physics say about it at the level we have now reached? The surface version of divine intervention is familiar. God, conceived as a personal being who exists somewhere outside the universe, reaches into the universe from outside and alters the course of events. A miracle, a suspension of natural law, an external cause producing an effect in the physical world. This is the picture that both skeptics and many believers share. The skeptic says it is impossible because there is no outside from which such intervention could originate. The believer says it is possible because God is omnipotent and not bound by natural law. Both of these responses are operating at the surface level. Both assume that divine intervention, if it occurs, must be a violation of the laws of nature by an external agent. And both are therefore engaging with a picture of the divine that is, by the standards of the deepest cosmological thinking in both physics and ancient wisdom traditions, a crude and imprecise picture. Here is what the layer beneath it actually looks like. If the universe is not located in a neutral container, but is instead an organized excitation of a deeper substrate, whether you call that substrate the quantum vacuum, Brahman, Ein Sof, or the mathematical structure from which space-time emerges, then the relationship between that substrate and the physical universe is not the relationship between an external agent and a closed system. It is the relationship between a field and its excitations, between the ocean and its waves, between a ground and its forms. In this picture, the question is not whether an external agent can reach in and alter events. The question is whether the substrate itself, the ground from which all events emerge, can organize those events in ways that appear, from within the system, to be coincidental or miraculous, but that are, from the perspective of the deeper layer, expressions of the substrate's own nature. This is not a vague claim. It has a specific physical analog. In quantum mechanics, the phenomenon of quantum coherence describes the ability of quantum systems to exist in superpositions of states and to exhibit interference patterns that depend on the correlations between those states. Decoherence, the process by which quantum coherence is lost through interaction with the environment, is what makes large-scale objects appear to behave classically rather than quantum mechanically. The quantum weirdness is not eliminated at large scales. It is hidden, suppressed by the overwhelming number of environmental interactions that wash out the coherence. But it is not gone. Some researchers in quantum biology, including the work on photosynthesis, conducted at the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and published in Nature in 2007, have found evidence that quantum coherence plays a functional role in biological processes at room temperature, in wet, warm, noisy environments where conventional wisdom said coherence could not survive. The energy transfer in photosynthetic complexes appears to use quantum superposition to explore multiple pathways simultaneously, finding the most efficient route with a speed and efficiency that classical random walk processes cannot explain. This is not evidence for divine intervention. Let us be precise. But it is evidence that the quantum substrate, the layer beneath classical physical processes, is not entirely cut off from macroscopic biological events. There are channels, specific structural conditions, under which the quantum layer and the classical layer remain coupled, in which the deeper substrate influences the surface in ways that look, from the surface, like remarkable efficiency or improbable coordination. If you extend this principle, not arbitrarily but following the logic of the framework, the question becomes, Are there conditions under which the deepest substrate of reality, the quantum vacuum, the underlying field, the ground from which space-time emerges, can organize events at the level of experienced reality in ways that are not violations of physical law, but expressions of a deeper physical law that operates at the level of the substrate itself? This is precisely the question that physicist David Bohm was asking when he developed what he called the implicate order. Bohm, who worked with Einstein at Princeton and later became one of the most original theoretical physicists of the 20th century, proposed in his 1980 book, Wholeness and the Implicate Order, that the universe has two orders of reality. The explicate order is what we normally observe, the world of separate objects moving through space and time, the world described by classical and quantum physics in its standard formulations. The implicate order is the underlying structure from which the explicate order is continuously unfolded and into which it is continuously enfolded. The implicate order is not located in space. It is the deeper structure from which space, among other things, is unfolded. Bohm used the analogy of a hologram. In a hologram, the information about the entire three-dimensional image is encoded in every part of the two-dimensional holographic plate. There is no separate location for each part of the image. The whole is enfolded into every part. Bohm proposed that the universe has this holographic structure at a fundamental level. Every region of space enfolds information about the whole. The apparent separateness of objects is a feature of the explicate order, not the implicate order. At the deeper level, everything is enfolded into everything else. This is not mysticism dressed up in physics language. Bohm developed this framework in response to the non-locality demonstrated by quantum mechanics, specifically the phenomenon of quantum entanglement. When two particles interact and then separate, they remain correlated in ways that cannot be explained by any local hidden variable theory, a fact established experimentally through tests of Bell's inequalities, most definitively in the experiments of Alain Aspect in 1982, and confirmed with increasing rigor in subsequent decades. The correlations between entangled particles are not mediated by signals traveling through space. They are expressions of an underlying connection that exists at the implicate level, a level at which the two particles are not separate objects, but aspects of a single enfolded structure. Now let us bring this back to the question of divine intervention, because here is where the layers converge. If the universe is located within, or as an excitation of, a deeper substrate that is non-local, that enfolds all of space-time within itself, that is the ground from which all events emerge. Then the relationship between this substrate and the events of the universe is not the relationship between an external agent and a closed system. It is the relationship between a source and its expressions, between an implicate order and its explicate unfolding. In this framework, what would divine intervention look like? It would not look like a violation of physical law. It would look like an event that is, from the perspective of the explicate order, improbable or inexplicable by the local causal chains visible at the surface. But that is, from the perspective of the implicate order, an expression of the deeper structure's own coherence. It would look like a coordination of events that appears coincidental from within the system, but that reflects a pattern organized at a level deeper than the level at which coincidence is defined. This is what Carl Jung called synchronicity, though he did not have the physics to formalize it. Synchronicity, in Jung's framework, is a meaningful coincidence and a causal connecting principle that links events not by mechanical causation, but by meaning, by the pattern they together express. Jung developed this concept in collaboration with Wolfgang Pauli, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, and their correspondence, published in the volume Atom and Archetype, is one of the most remarkable intellectual exchanges of the 20th century. Pauli was convinced that the deep structure of the psyche and the deep structure of matter were aspects of a single underlying order, and that the quantum weirdness at the level of physics was the same weirdness that appeared in the archetypal patterns of the unconscious. Neither of them had a complete theory, but the direction they were pointing was precise. Let us now go to the parable, because there is a truth here that the abstract language alone cannot carry. There was a woman named Mira who lived in a city built on the ruins of an older city. The city she lived in was clean and modern, and the streets were straight, and the buildings were made of glass and steel. She had lived there all her life, and she knew it well. She knew which streets led where. She knew the rhythms of the traffic and the patterns of the light. She knew the city the way you know a surface when you have moved across it for years. One winter, a construction crew broke ground on the block where she worked, and they dug down through the pavement and the concrete and the packed earth. And what they found beneath the foundations of the modern buildings was the floor plan of a city that had been there 1,000 years before. Streets that had run in different directions. Buildings that had served different purposes. A well that had been the center of a neighborhood that no longer existed in any visible form, but whose shape had quietly organized the streets above it. The modern city, it turned out, was not built on neutral ground. It was built on a previous order that it had not replaced but merely covered. The old city was still there. It had just become the layer beneath. Mira stood at the edge of the excavation for a long time. She was looking at something that had always been beneath her feet, something that had shaped every street she had walked on, every corner she had turned, without her knowing it. The city she thought she knew was the surface. The city beneath it was the structure that made the surface possible. And then the construction foreman said something to her that she would think about for the rest of her life. He said, "And there is something beneath that too. We stopped here because this is where our project ends, but the ground goes deeper. There is always another layer." She went home that night, and she sat in her apartment, and she looked at the floor beneath her feet, and she thought about what it meant that every surface she had ever stood on was the top of something deeper, that the ground was never the ground, that what felt like foundation was always, at some level, another surface. And she thought about the city she had built in her mind, the map of reality she had assembled over decades, the assumptions about what was solid and what was fixed and what was final. And she wondered how many layers had always been beneath it, waiting for someone to dig. This is the question the universe is asking you right now, not just about cosmology, about everything you have accepted as the floor. What is beneath the foundation you are standing on, and what is beneath that? Has there been a pattern in your own life that dissolved the moment you looked directly at it? A belief about the nature of things that held its shape until you applied exactly the kind of attention we are applying here, and then simply could not hold. Tell us in the comments what you found when you looked beneath what you had been standing on. Let us now do something specific. Let us do it right now, as you listen. Find something in your immediate environment that feels solid. A wall, a floor, a table. Something that represents, in your sensory experience, the quality of fixedness and finality. Something that seems to simply be there, complete and self-explanatory. Now hold that object or surface in your awareness and let the following information enter. The atoms that make up that surface are mostly empty space. The nucleus of each atom occupies roughly 100,000th of the atom's diameter. If you scaled a hydrogen atom to the size of a football stadium, the nucleus would be the size of a marble at the center, and the electron would be somewhere in the upper seats. Between them, nothing. The apparent solidity of the surface you are looking at is a product of electromagnetic forces between electron clouds, not of physical contact between solid objects. The surface is not solid in the way it appears. It is a field effect. It is the felt consequence of quantum mechanical interactions between probability distributions. Now go one layer deeper. Those electron clouds, those probability distributions, are not objects in locations. They are solutions to the Schrödinger equation, mathematical structures that describe the probability of finding a quantum of charge if you were to measure. Before measurement, the electron is not somewhere specific. It is a smear of probability across a region of space. The solidity you feel when you press your hand against a surface is the repulsion between your electron probability clouds and the surface's electron probability clouds. Two probability distributions refusing to overlap. Now go one layer deeper still. The electrons and the quarks inside the protons and neutrons of the nucleus are excitations of quantum fields. The fields are not in the object. The fields are everywhere. The object is a local organization of field excitations. The table is a pattern in the quantum fields, a standing wave, a temporarily stable form that the fields have taken. The fields themselves extend throughout all of space-time. The table is not a thing sitting in space. It is a form that the space itself has taken. Feel what happens in your body when you hold that understanding, not as an abstract idea, but as a perception. You are not looking at a solid object. You are looking at a pattern in a field. The field is not inside the object. The object is inside the field. The field is inside something deeper still. This is not a meditation technique. This is what the physics describes. The practice is simply letting the physics land at the level of perception rather than stopping at the level of information. Now let us go back to the question of where the universe is located, because we have gathered enough layers to see something that was hidden at the beginning. The universe is not located in space. Space is a property of the universe. The universe is not located in time. Time is a property of the universe. The universe is not located in the quantum vacuum, because the quantum vacuum is itself a state of the quantum fields that make up the universe. The universe is not located in the mathematical structure that describes it, because the mathematical structure is a description, and descriptions are not containers. So where is it? Here is the answer that the deepest layer of both physics and ancient wisdom converges on, and it is an answer that requires you to release the assumption that location is a property that everything must have. The universe is not located. It is self-subsistent. It does not exist within a container, because the concept of a container requires a geometry, and geometry is something the universe has rather than something it is inside of. The universe does not exist at a place, because place is a relationship between things within the universe, not a relationship between the universe and something outside it. But, and this is the layer that changes everything, this does not mean the universe is all there is. It means the universe is all the located things there are. It means that if there is something beyond the universe, it is not beyond it in a spatial sense. It is beyond it in an ontological sense. It is a different kind of existence, one that does not have location the way physical things have location. This is precisely what the Kabbalistic tradition means by Ein Sof. Not a God who is somewhere else, a ground of being that is not located anywhere, because location is a property of the things that emerge from it. Ein Sof does not exist in space. Space exists within Ein Sof, or more precisely, space is one of the forms that Ein Sof's creative unfolding takes. This is precisely what Advaita Vedanta means when it says the universe is Brahman. Not that the universe and God are the same thing in a flat, undifferentiated sense, but that the universe is Brahman appearing in a particular form, the way a wave is the ocean appearing in a particular form. The wave is located. The ocean is what location happens within. And this is precisely what David Bohm meant by the implicate order. Not a mystical realm separate from physics, a deeper level of physical reality from which the explicate order of located, separate objects is continuously unfolded. A level at which the question of where something is does not apply in the same way, because at the implicate level, everything is enfolded into everything else, and the notion of separate location is a feature of the explicate unfolding, not the underlying structure. Now we can ask the question of divine intervention with the precision it deserves. If the universe is an unfolding of a deeper substrate that is not itself located, that is not itself subject to the causal laws that govern the explicate order, then the relationship between that substrate and the events of the universe is not the relationship between an external cause and its effects. It is the relationship between a source and its expressions. The source does not intervene from outside. The source is what the inside is made of. In this framework, what we call divine intervention is not a violation of natural law, it is an expression of a deeper natural law, one that operates at the level of the implicate order rather than the explicate order. It is the substrate organizing its own unfolding in a way that, from within the explicate order, appears as a coincidence, a miracle, a moment of inexplicable grace. But from the perspective of the deeper layer, it is simply the substrate being what it is. This changes the meaning of prayer. It changes the meaning of intention. It changes the meaning of consciousness. If the substrate from which the universe unfolds is not inert, if it is not a passive ground but an active source, if it has the properties that both quantum field theory and the ancient wisdom traditions describe, then the question of whether consciousness can influence physical events is not a question about whether mind can violate physics. It is a question about whether consciousness is coupled to the substrate in a way that allows it to participate in the unfolding of the explicate order. And here is where we arrive at something that the physics genuinely does not yet resolve, but that the direction of the evidence is pointing toward. The measurement problem in quantum mechanics, which we touched on earlier, is not just a technical puzzle about when wave functions collapse. It is a deep question about the role of observation, of awareness, in the constitution of physical reality. The Copenhagen interpretation, for all its instrumentalist pragmatism, contains the claim that measurement, which requires an observer, is what gives quantum possibilities their definite classical values. Without measurement, without observation, the quantum system evolves as a superposition. With measurement, a definite outcome is realized. The question of what counts as a measurement, what counts as an observer, has never been satisfactorily answered within the Copenhagen framework. Physicists like John von Neumann and Eugene Wigner took seriously the possibility that consciousness itself is the relevant factor, that the collapse of the wave function requires not just a physical detector, but an aware observer. This is a minority position in contemporary physics, but it is held by serious physicists, and it has never been definitively refuted, because the measurement problem itself has never been definitively solved. If consciousness is coupled to the quantum substrate, if awareness is not a passive receiver of information about a predetermined physical world, but an active participant in the unfolding of quantum possibilities into classical actualities, then the question of divine intervention becomes the question of the relationship between awareness and the implicate order. And the ancient wisdom traditions have been mapping that relationship for thousands of years. In the Vedantic framework, the individual consciousness, the jiva, is not separate from Brahman. It is Brahman appearing in a particular form, the way a wave is the ocean in a particular form. When the jiva recognizes its identity with Brahman, a state the Vedantic tradition calls moksha, or liberation, it is not acquiring a new property. It is recognizing what was always true. The individual awareness was always the universal awareness, appearing in a particular form. The veil between them was not a barrier, but a temporary modification of the same substrate. In the Kabbalistic framework, the human soul, the neshama, is described as a portion of the divine, a spark of Ein Sof that has descended into the material world. The purpose of human life in this framework is not to escape the material world, but to elevate it, to reveal the divine sparks hidden in all material things and return them to their source. This process, called tikkun olam, repair of the world, is not metaphorical. It is a description of how the finite participates in the self-organization of the infinite. The human being is not a passive observer of a universe that God manages from outside. The human being is the point at which the implicate order becomes conscious of itself and begins to participate in its own unfolding. This is the layer beneath divine intervention that changes what the phrase means. Divine intervention is not God reaching into the universe from outside. It is the universe's own deepest substrate, the implicate order, the quantum vacuum, the ground of being, becoming conscious through a particular node, a particular awareness, and organizing its unfolding in response to that awareness. You are not separate from the substrate that is intervening. You are the point at which the substrate is aware of itself, and the intervention is not happening to you. It is happening through you. Let us sit in that for a moment before we go to the next layer. What this means practically is that the question of whether divine intervention is real is the wrong question. The right question is whether you are operating at the surface level of your existence, where you are a separate object in a world of separate objects, or at the deeper level, where you are a node of awareness in a substrate that is continuously unfolding the world through every node simultaneously. At the surface level, intervention is something that happens to you from outside. At the deeper level, you are not separate from the source of what you are calling intervention. You are the substrate's way of being present in the explicate order. This is not a comfortable idea for the surface self. The surface self, the ego, the identity built from a lifetime of treating the explicate order as the only order, finds this idea threatening. Because if you are not separate from the source, then you cannot appeal to the source as an external authority. You cannot ask God to fix what you are unwilling to look at. You cannot use divine intervention as a substitute for the inner work of recognizing what layer you are actually operating from. But it is also the most empowering idea available, because it means that access to the deeper substrate is not a matter of being chosen or favored or lucky. It is a matter of depth, of how far beneath the surface you are willing to look, of whether you are willing to release the assumption that the explicate order is all there is and allow the implicate order to become accessible to your awareness. This is what every genuine spiritual tradition has been pointing at. Not the surface version, not the institutional version, not the version that has been packaged and sold and used to manage populations. The actual core, the layer beneath the layer beneath the layer. The Zen tradition calls it your original face before your parents were born. The Christian mystical tradition, in figures like Meister Eckhart, calls it the ground of the soul, the Grund, the place where the soul and God are not two. The Sufi tradition calls it Fana, the annihilation of the separate self in the divine reality. The Taoist tradition calls it Wu Wei, action from the source rather than from the surface self. Effortless action that is aligned with the Tao, the underlying principle from which all things emerge. These are not different descriptions of different things. They are different maps of the same territory, drawn by different cultures, with different languages and different conceptual frameworks, but pointing at the same layer, the layer beneath the separate self, the layer at which the individual awareness and the universal substrate are not two separate things, but one thing appearing in two modes. Now let us go to the second parable, because there is a specific quality of this recognition that the abstract language alone does not convey. There was a physicist named Elias who spent 30 years studying the quantum vacuum. He was not a mystic. He was not interested in spirituality. He was interested in the mathematics of the lowest energy state of quantum fields, and he had published papers on the Casimir effect and vacuum fluctuations, and the cosmological constant problem. He was one of the most rigorous people in his field. Late in his career, he was asked to give a public lecture on his work, and he stood in front of an audience of non-physicists and tried to explain what the quantum vacuum was. He said it this way: "Imagine that you could remove everything from a region of space. Every particle, every photon, every form of matter and energy. You might think you would be left with nothing, but you would not. You would be left with something. You would be left with a state of minimum energy that is seething with quantum fluctuations, with virtual processes, with fields in their ground state. You would be left with the vacuum, and the vacuum is not nothing. It is the most fundamental something there is. It is the ground from which everything else emerges." A woman in the audience raised her hand and asked, "What is the vacuum made of?" Elias paused for a long time. He said, "That is the question I have been trying to answer for 30 years. And the honest answer is that the vacuum is not made of anything in the sense you mean. It is not made of smaller pieces. It is the thing that smaller pieces are made of. It is the substrate. It is the ground. There is nothing beneath it in the physics I know, and yet it is not nothing. It is full. It is the fullest thing there is." The woman nodded slowly and said, "We have a word for that in my tradition. We call it the ground of being." Elias looked at her for a moment, and then he said, "Yes, I think that is exactly what it is." He went home that night, and he sat with that conversation for a long time. He had spent 30 years studying the ground of being with equations, and he had never called it that. He had been so focused on the mathematics of the surface that he had not noticed what the mathematics was pointing at. The vacuum was not a technical detail of quantum field theory. It was the universe's answer to the question of where it is located. It is located in its own ground. It is the wave that is also the ocean. It is the excitation that is also the field. He did not become a mystic after that conversation, but he started reading the Upanishads, and he found in the Mandukya Upanishad's description of Turiya the fourth state of consciousness that underlies and pervades the three ordinary states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. A description of the vacuum that was structurally identical to what he had been calculating for 3 decades. Turiya is not a state you enter and leave. It is the ground state of consciousness, the substrate from which all other states arise. It is always present, the way the vacuum is always present beneath all excitations. It is not empty. It is the fullness from which all apparent content emerges. He published one more paper before he retired. It was a philosophical paper, not a physics paper, and it was titled "The Vacuum as the Ground of Being," a structural comparison of quantum field theory and Vedantic cosmology. It was not widely cited, but it was precise. Now let us return to the question of location one final time, because there is a layer we have not yet reached, and it is the deepest one. Everything we have discussed so far has been about the location of the universe in the physical and ontological sense. Where does the universe exist? What is it within? What is its ground? And we have found that the universe is not within a container, but is itself the structure from which location emerges, and that beneath that structure is a substrate, the quantum vacuum, the implicate order, the ground of being, that is itself not located, but is the source from which all located things unfold. But there is one more layer, and it is the one that connects everything. Where is your experience of the universe located? Not the universe itself, your experience of it. The awareness that is reading these words right now, the consciousness that is taking in this information, the presence that is here, listening. Where is that located? You might say it is located in your brain. And there is certainly a correlation between brain activity and conscious experience. Damage the brain and you change the experience. Alter the brain chemistry and you alter the quality of awareness. The brain is clearly involved in the production of experience. But the hard problem of consciousness, the term coined by philosopher David Chalmers in 1995, is the problem of explaining why there is any subjective experience at all. Why is there something it is like to be you? Why does the neural activity in your brain produce a felt, qualitative experience rather than just processing information in the dark, the way a computer processes information without any inner light of awareness? The correlation between brain states and conscious states is not in dispute. What is in dispute is why the correlation exists. Why does the physical substrate of the brain give rise to experience at all? This is not a solved problem. It is not even close to a solved problem. The most honest statement in contemporary neuroscience is that we have no idea why there is subjective experience. We can map the neural correlates of consciousness with increasing precision. We can identify which brain regions are active during which experiences, but we cannot explain why any of it feels like anything. The explanatory gap between objective physical processes and subjective experience has not been closed. It has barely been acknowledged by most working scientists. But the ancient wisdom traditions did not have this problem. Not because they solved it, but because they started from the opposite assumption. The modern scientific picture starts with matter and tries to explain how matter gives rise to consciousness. The ancient wisdom traditions, almost without exception, start with consciousness and explain how matter arises from it. In the Vedantic framework, consciousness is not a product of the brain. Consciousness is the substrate. Brahman is Satchit Ananda, being consciousness bliss. And consciousness is built into the fundamental nature of the ground of being. The brain does not produce consciousness. The brain is a structure through which consciousness, which is everywhere and always, focuses into a particular point of view. This is called panpsychism, in contemporary philosophy of mind, the view that consciousness or proto-conscious properties are fundamental features of reality rather than emergent products of complex physical systems. It is a minority position in academic philosophy, but it is growing, with serious philosophers like David Chalmers, Galen Strawson, and Philip Goff developing rigorous versions of the view. And it is the view that is most consistent with the picture we have been building. If consciousness is fundamental, if it is a property of the substrate rather than a product of the surface, then your experience of the universe is not located in your brain in the way a file is located on a hard drive. Your experience is a local focusing of a universal awareness, a particular perspective that the substrate is taking on itself. Your brain is the mechanism through which the universal awareness narrows to a particular point of view, not the mechanism through which awareness is produced from non-aware matter. And if this is true, then the question of where the universe is located has a final answer that was hidden beneath every other answer. The universe is located in awareness, not in your individual awareness, not in the awareness of any particular brain. In the universal awareness, that is the substrate's own nature. The universe is not observed by consciousness from outside. The universe is the substrate's way of being aware of itself. Every point of consciousness, every aware being, every moment of experience is a point at which the substrate recognizes itself. The universe is not located in space. Space is located in the universe. The universe is not located in consciousness. Consciousness is what the universe is made of at its deepest layer. This is the answer that was hiding beneath the question from the beginning. Where is the universe located? It is located in the awareness that is asking the question. Not because you created it, not because it is a projection of your individual mind, but because awareness is not your private possession. Awareness is the ground. You are a node of that ground. The universe is the ground, knowing itself through every node simultaneously. And the question of where the universe is located, asked by a node of the ground, is the ground asking itself where it is. And the answer is, here, always here, in this awareness, in this moment, in the only place awareness ever is. This is what the Zen tradition points at when it says the Buddha nature is your original face. Not a metaphor, not a consolation, a precise description of the ontological relationship between individual awareness and the ground of being. Your awareness is not a product of the universe. Your awareness is the universe's way of being present to itself at this particular point. This is what the Christian mystic Meister Eckhart meant when he said, "The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me." Not a poetic flourish, a precise description of the non-dual relationship between individual consciousness and the ground of being. The awareness through which you perceive the universe is the same awareness through which the universe is aware of itself at this point. And this is what divine intervention actually is, at the deepest layer. It is not God reaching into the universe from outside. It is the universe's own awareness, the ground recognizing itself through a particular node, organizing the unfolding of the explicate order in response to that recognition. When you become aware of the layer you are actually operating from, when you stop treating the surface as the whole story and allow the deeper substrate to become present in your awareness, you are not accessing something foreign or external. You are recognizing what was always already here. And that recognition changes what unfolds. Not by violating physics, by operating at the level of physics that most people never reach. The level at which the implicate order and the explicate order are in communication. The level at which awareness and matter are not two separate things, but two aspects of a single substrate. This is the shocking truth about divine intervention. It is not shocking because it is supernatural. It is shocking because it is more natural than anything you have been taught to call natural. It is the deepest nature of what the universe is, expressing itself through the only channel through which it can express itself at the level of your experience, your awareness. You have been waiting for the universe to intervene from outside. The universe has been waiting for you to recognize that there is no outside. There is only the substrate, appearing as everything, including as the awareness that is reading these words right now. Take a moment with that, not as a concept, as a recognition. Let the question arise genuinely. What would change in how you move through this day if you actually operated from this layer? Not the layer where you are a separate object in a world of separate objects, hoping that an external force will rearrange the other objects in your favor, but the layer where you are a node of the substrate's own awareness, and the unfolding of your experience is the substrate recognizing itself through you. What would you stop waiting for? What would you start doing? What would you stop treating as fixed and final, knowing that the surface is always the thinnest layer of what is actually present? This is the practice, not a visualization, not a breathing exercise. A genuine question held with real seriousness. Where am I operating from right now? The surface level, where I am separate and the universe is other, or the deeper level, where I am a node of the substrate and the universe is what I am made of. You cannot hold both simultaneously for long. The surface self will reassert itself. That is what it does. But each time you drop beneath it, each time you allow the recognition to be present for even a moment, you are not performing a spiritual practice. You are doing what the universe does when it becomes aware of itself. You are the substrate recognizing itself at this particular point in the explicate order. And every time that recognition occurs, something shifts. Not always in the dramatic way the surface self wants, not always in the form of a visible miracle, but in the quality of what unfolds. In the coherence of the events that gather around a life that is operating from the implicate level rather than only the explicate level. In the strange synchronicities, the improbable coordinations, the sense that the universe is not indifferent, but is somehow oriented toward the awareness that is present enough to notice it. This is what the ancient traditions called grace. Not a reward for good behavior, not a favor from an external deity. The natural consequence of operating from the level at which the substrate and the individual awareness are recognized as not two separate things. Grace is what the substrate does when a node of its own awareness recognizes what it is. It organizes itself around that recognition. Because the recognition is not separate from the organizing, the awareness and the substrate are the same thing. When the awareness recognizes itself, the substrate is recognizing itself, and the unfolding of the explicate order reflects that recognition. This is not a promise of a particular outcome. It is a description of a relationship. The relationship between a wave and the ocean, when the wave knows it is the ocean. The relationship between a note and the music, when the note knows it is the music. The relationship between you and the universe, when you know that you are not in the universe as a separate object, but of the universe as an expression of its deepest nature. The universe is not located somewhere you are not. The universe is located in the same awareness that is asking where it is. And the moment that recognition lands, not as information but as direct perception, the veil does not just thin, it dissolves. Not because it was hiding something, because it was made of the assumption that there was something to hide. If there is someone in your life who has been sensing that the surface is not the whole story, someone who has been standing at the edge of a question they could not quite form, share this transmission with them. You are not giving them a video. You are giving them the layer beneath the question they have already been living inside. And when two people look at the same depth together, the recognition does not just double. It opens a shared channel into the substrate that neither could access alone. That is not metaphor. That is what happens when two nodes of the same ground recognize each other. Also, if there is a moment of stillness available to you, the quiet of early morning before the surface noise begins, or the threshold of sleep, when the explicate order loosens its grip, return to this transmission then. The layers land differently when the surface is not competing. There is a community of people who have watched this transmission and arrived at this layer, and I want to ask you something specific. Not what you thought of the ideas. What did you feel when the recognition landed? Was there a moment where the question of where the universe is located became, for a moment, not a question at all? Where the answer was not a concept, but a direct perception? A felt sense of the ground that is not behind you or above you or outside you, but is the very fabric of the awareness that is here. Drop one word in the comments that describes what that moment felt like. Not an explanation. One word. Because the word that comes before the explanation is closer to the actual recognition than anything you could say about it. And if this transmission reached a layer you had not been shown before, share it with someone who is ready to stop at the surface, not to convince them, to give them the map, because the map has always been available. What changes is the willingness to look beneath the layer you are standing on. The universe is not located somewhere out there, waiting to be found. It is located here, in the awareness that is asking. And what was always beneath the question was the one asking it. What has been revealed cannot be rehidden. You have seen the layer now, and the surface will never look quite the same again.